William Miller sat in his old, worn-out lazy boy, the cracked leather sighing under his weight. It was the same chair where his late wife, Carol, used to sit and knit, and if he closed his eyes, he could almost conjure her scent of lavender and Earl Grey tea. Now, a profound, tomb-like silence filled the two-bedroom condo in Queens, a silence so deep he could hear the hum of the refrigerator and the faint, relentless ticking of a mantel clock. A lonely sunbeam, cutting through the dusty window pane, illuminated a galaxy of dust motes dancing in the air like tiny lost souls. The walls were a museum of a life lived. A young Bill, ramrod straight in his Marine Corps dress blues, his arm wrapped possessively around a beaming Carol, their children, Kevin and Jessica, as freckle-faced toddlers building a clumsy sandcastle at Jones Beach. The old man's heart ached with a loneliness so profound it felt like a physical weight on his chest. He wasn't living anymore. He was curating memories, waiting for the reel to run out. A sudden, jarring buzz from the building's intercom made him jump, his heart thumping against his ribs. Who on earth could that be? His neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez from 3B, asking for a cup of sugar again. A package delivery he didn't remember ordering? He shuffled slowly across the worn carpet in his threadbare slippers, his joints protesting with every step. Peering through the peephole, his breath caught. It was them, his children. Kevin, looking sharp and sterile in an expensive suit that probably cost more than Bill's monthly Social Security check. And Jessica, a vision of urban chic with a flawless blowout and blood-red nails, emanating a cloud of perfume that was an aggressive assault on the condo's quiet, musty air. "Daddy, hi!" Jessica chirped as he opened the door, planting a kiss somewhere in the air near his cheek. He saw her nose wrinkle almost imperceptibly at the familiar smell of old books, Bengay, and Vicks VapoRub. She stayed carefully out of reach. "Kevin, Jessica, what a surprise. You didn't call," William murmured, a confused but genuine smile touching his lips. The sudden joy of seeing them was instantly at war with the familiar, nagging feeling that he was an inconvenience, a problem to be managed. "We're here on business, Dad." "Important business," Kevin began, his tone all boardroom efficiency. He strode into the living room as if he were assessing a property for acquisition, his disdainful eye cataloging the dated furniture and the faded floral wallpaper. "We've been talking, and we think it's time. It's getting hard for you here alone. The cleaning, the cooking, hauling groceries up the stairs. And your health? Your blood pressure has been all over the place. We're really worried about you." Jessica glided over, perching delicately on the edge of the sofa and placing her perfectly manicured hand on his wrinkled one. Her touch was as light and cool as a reptile's. "Daddy, we found the most wonderful place for you, an assisted living community for veterans. It's called Serenity Meadows. The brochure is unbelievable. The care there is incredible. Doctors on call 24/7, a gourmet dining hall, activities, social events, even a pudding green. It's like a permanent vacation at a 5-star resort. We only want what's best for you, you know that." William looked from his son's impassive face to his daughter's bright, false smile. He felt a familiar chill run down his spine, the same one he felt when a deal sounded too good to be true. A retirement community. The words were so soft, so sanitized, but he knew their real name. A nursing home. A place you send people when they've become a burden, an obstacle to be cleared. "Why would I need that, kids?" he asked, his voice softer than he intended. "I'm okay here. I manage just fine." "Dad, don't be stubborn." Kevin's tone hardened, losing its patient veneer. "We've already put down a deposit. This isn't up for debate. This is an intervention, for your own good. Think about it. You're cooped up alone here all day. There, you'll be with people your own age, guys who get it, who share your interests. You can play poker, join a book club. We'll visit every single weekend, we promise." Jessica nodded with an enthusiasm that was utterly unconvincing. Their eyes were shining, not with filial love, but with the manic gleam of prospectors who've just struck gold. Something was hidden behind this syrupy concern. William sighed, a deep, rattling sound of exhaustion. He was too old and too tired to fight them, and a pathetic part of him, a part he hated, so desperately wanted to believe them that he almost convinced himself they were right. Maybe it really would be better there. "Well, if you think it's for the best," he surrendered, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. as long as it puts your minds at ease. Kevin and Jessica exchanged a quick, triumphant glance over his head. It was almost imperceptible, but he saw it. The first phase of their plan was complete. The old man had taken the bait. A week of cloying, counterfeit affection followed. Kevin and Jessica became fixtures in the condo, bringing organic groceries he'd never eat, and loudly discussing the amazing amenities at Serenity Meadows on their speakerphones, a performance clearly staged for his benefit. Then, on a gray Friday afternoon, they brought the papers. "Dad, this is just a formality. A bit of paperwork to get things in order," Kevin explained briskly, spreading a sheaf of documents out on the kitchen table, over the old, cracked vinyl tablecloth. "It's a power of attorney. It's a standard document that lets us manage your affairs while you're settling in and relaxing. Pay the utility bills for the condo, handle any mail, deal with the bank. You won't have to worry about a single thing." William picked up the pen, a cheap blue Bic. His fingers, stiff with arthritis, trembled and refused to obey. He squinted at the dense wall of fine print, but the words swam before his eyes. Power of attorney. He'd worked his whole life as a union electrician, 2 jobs sometimes, to pay off this condo, his and Carol's fortress against the world. Every nail in the wall, every scratch on the floor, held a memory. Why does it need to be a durable power of attorney?" he rasped, the legal term snagging in his throat. He'd heard that phrase on TV law shows. "And it says here, with the right to sell property?" Jessica threw her hands up in a gesture of dramatic exasperation. "Daddy, don't be so suspicious. Sell. Who would want to sell this place? It's our family home. It's just the standard form the lawyer gave us. He said it's for your own protection. If, God forbid, some scammers tried to pull something with the property titles, this gives us the legal standing to represent you and protect your home. It's to keep you safe from predators." Kevin nodded sagely, pouring his father a glass of water he hadn't asked for. "Exactly. We don't want to have to bother you at your new home with every little bureaucratic thing. You'll be resting and making friends. We'll handle all the boring stuff from here. Just sign it, Dad. Don't drag this out. We still have to get a realtor to come by and do an appraisal. For insurance purposes, of course. To update the policy." He'd slipped up. Realtor, appraisal. The pieces didn't just click into place. They slammed together, forming a monstrous, cruel mosaic. They weren't just putting him in a home. They were going to sell it from under him. The pain was so sharp and sudden it stole his breath. He looked at his son, at his handsome, clean-shaven face, and the Rolex glinting on his wrist. He looked at his daughter, her perfect nails clutching a Louis Vuitton handbag, and in their eager, impatient eyes, he saw nothing but a bottomless, all-consuming greed. But what could he do? Yell? Accuse them? They would just exchange pitying glances, pat his hand, and tell him his mind was starting to go. They would find another way. But as he sat there, feeling the cold weight of their betrayal, a tiny, defiant spark ignited in the tired, weary corners of his mind. A plan. A desperate, risky plan, but one that offered a sliver of hope for justice. He had to play his part to the very end. With a heavy, theatrical sigh that communicated perfect, defeated resignation, William took the pen. He scrawled his signature, the letters shaky and misshapen, on the dotted line. "All right, kids, if you say so. I trust you." As they left, practically bouncing with relief, Kevin shot a subtle wink at his sister. They weren't even trying to hide their glee. The door clicked shut, a sound of finality, and William was alone. But now, the silence in the condo was no longer filled with despair. It was humming with the cold, quiet energy of a trap being set. The game was not over yet. Moving day was a bleak, overcast Tuesday. Kevin arrived in his gleaming black BMW, the engine purring with an offensive display of wealth. Jessica predictably couldn't make it, texting a flimsy excuse about a last-minute emergency at the salon. They had told him he could only bring one small suitcase, as if he were going on a weekend trip. William packed a change of clothes. A thick wool sweater Carol had knit for him decades ago, the small framed photo of her that sat on his nightstand, and his worn copy of The Old Man and the Sea. He walked through the rooms for the last time, saying a silent goodbye to his home. He ran his hand along the back of his lazy boy, touched the cool surface of the mahogany dresser where Carol's perfume bottle had always sat. It wasn't just a farewell to things. It was a farewell to a life. "Dad, you ready to go? I have a conference call in an hour. Time is money!" Kevin called impatiently from the hallway, his voice tight with irritation. William took one last lingering look at his fortress, the repository of his entire adult life, and walked out, quietly pulling the door closed behind him. He knew with a bone-deep certainty that he would never open it again. The drive was long and silent, leaving the familiar streets of the city behind for a soulless stretch of the I-95 corridor. The promised Serenity Meadows, which the brochure depicted with sun-dappled lawns and smiling seniors, turned out to be a squat 3-story brick building surrounded by a formidable chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. The sign, in stark, faded block letters, read, "Northwood County Care and Rehabilitation Center." "Son, this isn't the place from the pictures," William stammered, his voice barely a whisper, as the car pulled up to the shabby cracked pavement entrance. "Dad, don't start. They're rebranding, modernizing. It's what's on the inside that counts, right?" Kevin snapped, yanking the small suitcase from the trunk with a sigh of exasperation. "Come on, they're expecting you." The inside was an assault on the senses. It smelled of bleach, boiled cabbage, and a deeper, more pervasive scent of hopelessness. Long, dim corridors with institutional green scuff-marked walls were lined with elderly residents in washed-out identical gowns. They sat in wheelchairs like hallway sentinels, staring into space with empty, vacant eyes. This was not a resort. This was the end of the line. A heavy-set woman in ill-fitting scrubs, her face a mask of permanent exhaustion, met them at a reception desk. She quickly scanned the papers Kevin handed her. "Room 207, second floor. It's a quad." "A quad? You said a private suite. You promised." William looked at his son, his heart sinking into his shoes. "It's better this way, Dad. You'll make friends right away. You won't be lonely. Listen, I really have to go, my meeting. I'll call you. We'll visit on the weekend like we promised," Kevin rattled off, the words a rehearsed, meaningless script. He was already backing toward the exit, his car keys jingling in his hand. He didn't even hug his father goodbye. He just thrust a plastic bag of waxy, flavorless oranges into his hand, turned, and walked quickly away without a single backward glance. William watched him go until the automatic doors slid shut, erasing him from view. In that moment, the full weight of the bitterness, the humiliation, and the searing pain of betrayal crashed down on him. He stood in the middle of that wretched, foul-smelling hallway with his small suitcase and a bag of oranges, abandoned and deceived by his own children. Hot tears streamed down his wrinkled cheeks, but he made no sound. He just stood there and wept in silence, realizing that his life, as he knew it, was over. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the crushing layers of pain, a single stubborn ember still glowed, the ember of a plan that had to work. The moment Kevin's BMW cleared the gates of the care center, the look of feigned sympathy on his face dissolved, replaced by a predatory, satisfied smirk. He hit the speed dial for his sister. "It's done, Jess. Mission accomplished. You can officially congratulate me. Dad is checked in and tucked away. Dropped him off like a sack of potatoes. He whined a bit, of course, but the deed is done." Jessica's delighted, high-pitched shriek came through the phone's Bluetooth. "Kev, you're my absolute hero. I knew you could do it. I already called the realtor, Todd. He's a shark. He said he's got a cash buyer lined up, a couple from out of state looking to flip it. They're ready to make an offer, a little over asking, just to close fast before the end of the month." "Excellent." Kevin slapped the leather-wrapped steering wheel. "That means we can have the papers signed and the money wired within 2 weeks. We split it 50/50ths, clean, just like we agreed. I'm putting my half down on that commercial property in Soho. My business is about to go from boutique to empire. And I'm putting a deposit down on a new car tomorrow," Jessica chirped. "I'm getting the Tesla Model X, pearl white with the cream interior. Can you even imagine the looks on my friends' faces? And after that, I'm booking a 2-week first-class trip to a wellness retreat in Bali. We have to celebrate this new chapter of our lives properly." That evening, they met at a chic, ridiculously overpriced restaurant in Manhattan to celebrate their victory. Attentive waiters in crisp uniforms glided around them, soft jazz played in the background, and expensive champagne sparkled in tall crystal flutes. Kevin and Jessica, dressed to the nines and beaming with self-satisfaction, looked like a perfect, aspirational couple from a glossy magazine cover. Nothing about their polished exteriors betrayed the fact that they had just condemned their own father to a miserable existence in a state-run facility. "To a successful and very profitable venture," Kevin announced, raising his glass in a toast. "To our new life, free and clear," Jessica echoed, their glasses clinking together with a sharp, clear ring. They spent hours discussing the details of the sale, their voices buzzing with excitement. Todd, the realtor, was a master of his craft, skilled at greasing the wheels with the title company and preparing airtight contracts. The durable power of attorney was their golden ticket, their legal trump card. They felt like masters of the universe, smart and cunning predators who understood how the world really worked and always got what they wanted. "You don't think he'll call someone, try to complain?" Jessica asked with a flicker of doubt, momentarily pausing her oyster slurping. Kevin waved his hand dismissively, a gesture of supreme confidence. Who's he going to complain to? His drooling roommates? The overworked, underpaid nurses who couldn't care less? Besides, I accidentally left his old flip phone at the condo. He has no way to contact anyone. And even if he does, we'll just play the concerned children. We'll say the dementia is getting worse. He's getting paranoid, making things up. It's our word against a confused old man's. Don't worry, sis. It's all under control. In a month, we'll be rolling in cash." They laughed, their voices mingling with the sophisticated chatter of the restaurant. They ordered another bottle of champagne and a decadent chocolate lava cake to share. They were already spending the money from the sale of the condo, from the walls that held the warmth of their childhood, from the memory of their loving mother, from the remainder of their father's life. It was a vulture's feast on the bones of their own conscience, a thing they had long since discarded as a useless liability. They were certain of their victory, never suspecting that the most important move in this game had yet to be played. William spent 2 weeks entombed in the Northwood County Care Center. 2 weeks that blurred into one long, gray, unending day. He barely left his lumpy bed by the grimy window in the 4-person room. His roommates were a silent former longshoreman who had lost a leg in a shipping accident, a partially deaf old man who constantly muttered to himself, and a retired high school history teacher who was slowly losing his mind to despair, occasionally, shouting out dates from the Peloponnesian War. The food was a bland, lukewarm mush. The nurses were overworked and detached. The promised weekend visits from his children were, of course, a lie. Hope, a fragile thing to begin with, was slowly dying, replaced by a dull, aching emptiness. He stopped eating, pushed his medication aside. What was the point? It was all over. One afternoon, as he lay facing the wall, staring at a long, jagged crack in the peeling paint that looked like a map of a river, a nurse poked her head in. "Mr. Miller, you have a visitor." He didn't even turn his head, his voice a dry rasp. "It's a mistake. I don't have visitors. He says he's an old Marine buddy of yours, a Frank Russo." "He's very insistent," the nurse said, a hint of curiosity in her otherwise flat tone. Frankie, his buddy from the Corps, his best man, the man who had pulled him out of a burning foxhole in Korea. They hadn't seen each other in years, only talking on the phone every few months. How on earth did he find him here? The old man's heart, a tired, sluggish muscle, gave a powerful thump, then another. He slowly, painfully, sat up. Standing in the doorway was a tall, powerfully built man, his posture still ramrod straight despite his shock of white hair. His eyes, sharp and clear, held an intelligence and a fire that were a stark contrast to the oppressive, defeated atmosphere of the place. It was him, his friend Frankie. "Bill, you old son of a gun! What the hell happened to you?" Frank Russo strode into the room, his presence filling it with a forgotten energy. He pulled his friend into a firm, strong hug that felt like an anchor in a stormy sea. "Why didn't you call me?" "I kept calling your landline, no answer. I got a bad feeling, so I started digging. Track down your kid, Kevin. He's the one who gave me this song and dance about you being out here to recover and rest." Frank's voice was laced with a bitter sarcasm. He scanned the miserable, cramped room, his gaze taking in the stained floors and the sad institutional furniture, and his face darkened. "Recovering, huh? Some R&R. All right, Marine. Give me the full sit rep." "What did those goddamn vultures do?" And William told him everything. The fake concern, the manipulative lies, the power of attorney, the deception about the luxury community. He spoke quietly, his voice weak and hoarse, but with every word, a great weight lifted from his soul. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, he was talking to someone who believed him, who understood the language of betrayal and loyalty. Frank listened in a grim, stony silence, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. When William finished, his story hanging in the stale air between them, Frank stared into space for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice low and full of a cold, controlled fury. "Okay, we're not letting this stand. They think they pulled one over on a helpless old man, but they forgot that old man has friends who remember what Semper Fi means. Marines don't leave their own behind to be picked apart by jackals." Frank Russo hadn't faded away after the service. He'd gone to law school on the GI Bill, started a successful consulting firm, and in his retirement, after seeing too many of his brothers-in-arms fall through the cracks, he'd founded a well-funded charity for veterans. He had connections, resources, and most importantly, an unbreakable bulldog will. "Listen to me, Bill, and listen good," he said, leaning in close, his eyes blazing. "We don't have much time, but we can do this. They're going to sell the condo, and with that POA, we can't stop them. It's too late for that. But the money, they are not getting the money. There's a beautiful little legal loophole, I know. We need to take a little field trip. Are you ready to go on the offensive?" For the first time in weeks, a fire ignited in William Miller's tired, sunken eyes. It wasn't just hope. It was a primal hunger for justice. "I am, Frank. I'm ready." The next day, Frank Russo returned. This time, he wasn't alone. He was accompanied by a sharp, no-nonsense notary public, an old friend of Frank's from his law school days. Under the official-looking pretext of a legal consultation regarding retroactive VA benefits, a matter that made the facility's administrator snap to attention, they got permission to take William off-site for a few hours. To the indifferent staff, it was just another visit from a veterans aid group. They had no idea they were witnessing a covert operation, a perfectly executed flanking maneuver. They drove to a large, imposing downtown branch of Chase Bank, the very one where William had his life savings, and where he knew the proceeds from the sale would be wired. Dressed in a decent charcoal gray suit Frank had brought for him, William looked tired and frail, but his back was straight and his eyes were clear. He was no longer a broken victim. He was a soldier on a mission. In the quiet, wood-paneled office of the bank's branch manager, a man Frank also knew from his charities board, a short but critical meeting took place. Frank laid out the situation in concise, legal terms. William, in his own words, confirmed his intentions. "I, William P. Miller, being of sound mind and body, wish to file a standing order on my accounts," the old man said, his voice trembling slightly, but his gaze as steady as a rifle sight on the manager. "I hereby direct that any and all funds received via wire transfer from the sale of my property, located at 123 Maple Drive, Queens, New York, are to be transferred in their entirety and at the exact moment of receipt to the account of the charitable organization, the Veterans Legacy Fund, directed by Frank Russo. This is my considered and voluntary donation." The notary immediately drafted a legally impeccable document, a specific, conditional transfer order, tied to a single, anticipated transaction. This was the loophole, the legal equivalent of an ambush. His children, with the power of attorney, were merely agents in the sale. The undisputed owner of the bank account, and therefore the money, was still William. And he had every right to dispose of his funds before his agents ever had a chance to lay their greedy hands on them. William signed the document. His signature, once shaky, was now firm and clear. Then, he took a piece of the bank's letterhead and wrote a short note, just a few lines. He sealed it in an envelope and handed it to the bank manager. When my children come for the money, and you have the unfortunate task of informing them that there is none, please give them this," he requested. The manager, a respectable man in his 50s with kind eyes, looked at the old Marine with a deep and obvious sympathy. "Don't you worry, Mr. Miller. It will be my distinct pleasure to ensure this is done exactly as you've instructed." As they left the cool, marble-floored bank and stepped back into the sunlight, William took a deep, shuddering breath. For the first time in months, he felt light, not heavy. He wasn't getting revenge. He was restoring balance to the universe. "All right, Bill. Now we can get you to a real retirement community." Frank smiled, clapping him on the shoulder. "My foundation runs a beautiful assisted living facility upstate, right on the Hudson. Pine trees, a view of the river, a private chef, and good people. No more peeling paint and boiled cabbage. You're going home for real this time." The trap for Kevin and Jessica was set and baited. All that was left was for the greedy little mice to walk right into it. A month later, the condo sale was a done deal. Todd the realtor had worked his magic, and the deal closed without a single hitch. Kevin and Jessica held the closing documents in their hands, the paper feeling as crisp and valuable as cash itself. They confirmed with the title company the wire transfer for a handsome sum, $800,000, had been sent to their father's account. The day they scheduled their appointment to go to the bank was a day of high celebration. Jessica had spent the entire morning at a high-end spa and was wearing a new, form-fitting dress that screamed new money. Kevin wore a custom-tailored Italian suit and had his expensive shoes shine to a mirror finish. They were heading to this financial event like it was their own coronation, the culmination of all their brilliant planning. $800,000, Jess! That's $400,000 each, free and clear," Kevin said in an awed voice as they rode in the plush leather back seat of a black Uber. "I've already spoken to the broker about the down payment on that retail space in Soho. My company is about to become a major player. And I've already put the deposit down on the Tesla, the Model X pearl white with the cream interior and all the upgrades," Jessica chirped, checking her makeup in a compact mirror. "My friends are going to absolutely die of jealousy. And right after I pick it up, we're booking that 2-week trip to that 5-star wellness retreat in Bali. We have to celebrate this new chapter of our lives properly." They had completely and utterly forgotten about their father. They hadn't called the nursing home once, not even to feign concern. In their minds, he had ceased to exist as a person the moment he'd signed the power of attorney. He was just an obstacle on the path to their money, a problem that had been efficiently and permanently solved. They walked into the bank with the unearned air of conquerors. Their strides were confident, their smiles condescending. They felt like the elite, like people who understood how to live and take what was rightfully theirs by virtue of their own cleverness. "Good afternoon. We have a 3 o'clock appointment with the manager." "The name is Miller, regarding the account of William P. Miller," Kevin said, with a touch of practiced arrogance to the young receptionist. They were shown into the same quiet, wood-paneled office where their father had sat a month before. The manager greeted them politely, but with a cool professional reserve. He asked for their identification and the power of attorney. Kevin laid the documents on the polished mahogany desk with a flourish. "Yes, everything appears to be in order." The manager nodded after a moment of review, his face impassive. "The wire transfer for the sale was received late yesterday afternoon." Kevin and Jessica exchanged a look of pure, unadulterated triumph. This was it. The finish line. The jackpot. "Excellent," Kevin said, leaning back in his leather chair and making a steeple with his fingers. "We'd like to initiate a transfer to withdraw the full amount, as we noted in our appointment request." "Of course," the manager replied, his voice still perfectly even. "There's just one small problem with that." "What kind of problem?" Jessica's brow furrowed, her good mood souring instantly. The manager paused for a fraction of a second, letting the weight of the silence fill the room, as if savoring the moment. "The problem is that the current balance in your father's account is $0.00." A deafening, crushing silence fell over the office. Kevin and Jessica stared at the manager, his words hanging in the air, refusing to compute. It was as if he'd suddenly started speaking a foreign language. "What? What do you mean, zero?" Kevin was the first to find his voice, which came out as a strangled croak. His face, moments before flush with victory, began to turn a dark, mottled shade of red. Are you kidding me? The wire for $800,000 came in yesterday. We have the confirmation from the title company. That is absolutely correct. It did, the manager explained, his voice a calm, level sea of professional courtesy. And at the exact moment of its arrival, as per a legally binding and notarized standing order filed by the account holder, Mr. William P. Miller, the full amount was automatically transferred to the charitable fund known as the Veterans Legacy Fund as a voluntary donation. Jessica made a strange, strangled, gulping sound, a mix between a gasp and a sob. Her perfectly made-up face twisted into a grotesque mask of disbelief and pure, unadulterated rage. What fund? What order? He couldn't have done that. He's in a state-run nursing home. He's senile. This is obviously fraud. We'll sue you. We'll sue the whole bank. I'm afraid you will find that course of action to be fruitless. The manager's composure was a magnificent, unshakable fortress. The order was filed by your father in person, in this very office, in my presence, and was legally witnessed and notarized. A court-appointed competency assessment was performed on the spot. Mr. Miller was found to be of perfectly sound mind and was acting entirely of his own free will. We have all the supporting documentation, as well as a high-definition video recording of the entire signing process. Kevin shot out of his chair, slamming his fist on the polished desk with a loud crack that made Jessica jump. How dare he? That ungrateful old man. We took care of him. We found him a place to live. We did everything for him, and this is how he repays us? He left his own children with absolutely nothing. The phrase, took care of him, hung in the air, a monstrous, cynical lie that was so audacious it was almost breathtaking. The manager simply raised a single, unimpressed eyebrow. On that note, your father asked me to give you this letter, he said, sliding a plain white envelope across the desk as if disposing of a piece of trash. With trembling, furious hands, Kevin snatched it and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of the bank's expensive, watermarked letterhead, on which a few lines were written in a familiar, steady, and resolute hand. My dear children, Kevin and Jessica, you said you wanted me to be on a permanent vacation, in a wonderful place with great care. With my donation, I have simply fulfilled your wish. The money from the condo you were so eager to sell will now ensure I have a dignified and comfortable life at my friend's private facility, and what's left over will help other old soldiers whose children have forgotten them. Don't look for me. Live with what you've earned. Your father. Kevin stared at the letter, his face a canvas of impotent fury. It was all gone. The Soho retail space, the white Tesla, the trip to Bali, the entire fantasy of their new life. All of it had turned to smoke and ash. They were left with nothing. Worse than nothing. They were left with the hefty bill for the realtor's commission and the crushing public weight of their own shame. Jessica finally broke down completely, her body racked with loud, ugly, hysterical sobs that smeared her expensive mascara down her cheeks in black rivulets. What have we done? What are we going to do now? Kevin stood silently, his fists clenched at his sides, staring into space. He had lost. Their brilliant, cunning plan had been utterly and completely destroyed by a simple, elegant move from the old, written-off man they had so carelessly thrown away. And at that very moment, 100 miles upstate, in a sun-drenched garden of a high-end assisted living community overlooking the Hudson River, William Miller sat in a comfortable, cushioned wicker chair. Across from him at a small table with a marble chessboard sat his friend Frank. William moved his knight, capturing his opponent's queen in a classic fork. He looked up from the board at the tall pine trees swaying in the breeze, breathed in the clean, crisp air, and smiled. A genuine, peaceful smile for the first time in years. He felt free. Justice had been served.